Morning, gents.
Good morning.
Rob.
How are we doing?
Good morning, everybody.
Thank you very much for coming. Shall we kick off just down the line, very quick introductions just for the people who don't necessarily, even though you're icons in the industry. Quick
He's saying we're old. You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Yes, hi. Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's a fantastically full audience. I'm Chris Cecil-Wright. I run a small yacht brokerage business with 25 people, and we primarily focus on boats of 60 meters and above, and again, primarily Northern European build, just more of a...
Well, thanks for being here, Rob. Stefan, Zschocke is my name. I took over the helm from Oyster Yachts September last year. And just for the benefit of the audience, Oyster Yachts is blue water sailing, starting from 50 feet up to 120, at least that's what we have done. We have delivered so far 1,400 boats to the market. And what we do see, and we will come to that certainly in a minute or later, is we are not only seen as a manufacturing brand, but a lifestyle brand, and we will come to that later.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Anders Kurten. I run a small superyacht services company called Fraser Yachts, really a full 360-degree services provider, sales brokerage, charter, yacht management, crew, and insurance.
Thank you. Very well done. So we've clearly got various different parts of the industry represented here, kind of deliberately, obviously, but quite neatly segmented up. So there should be some good perspectives, hopefully, here. So let's just start. We've called this Surveying the State of Yachting, but it's sort of a general chat about the state of the industry, really. So Anders, why don't you kick off? I mean, so Fraser, there was a stat, you've sold 12 yachts in 12 days. Stellar start to the year. Just talk about how you see, not only just the market, but just the industry in general from your perspective.
I think we're cautiously optimistic for the upcoming 12 months now. 12 yachts in 12 days sounds like a lot, which it actually is, because in any typical sort of normalized 12-month period of time, we would typically have about 50 brokerage transactions, 30 meter plus. So are we ever going to repeat this feat? I don't know. We didn't in February. It was still a good month. I think our sort of overall budgetary projection is cautious growth in all main business areas for the next following 12-month period. So as such, I'm cautiously optimistic.
That is a well-worn phrase in yachting, I've come to learn. I mean, what is it that that Fraser have done so well, you know, to get to that stat? What is it that you're excelling at in your view?
Look, at the end of the day, I sort of believe that there's really no silver bullets. There's really no shortcuts, and there's no sort of singular grand sweeping gestures that have contributed to this. This is a services industry, so there's nothing in stock, nothing in inventory. Our ambition level always has been and will be to try to provide the best possible service for each and every client, whatever their use case or need may be. And having some of the best brokers in the industry certainly helps and contributes.
Chris, then from your point of view, you said you're in a sort of top end of the market, run a much smaller operation. What things are you seeing?
Well, I mean, generally, I'm pretty excited about the future from where I sit. I mean, I said we're a small business. We're 25 people, maybe 28 people. I sort of lose track, but I'm primarily looking at the bigger end of the market, just because it takes just as much time to sell a 30 meter as it does a 60 meter, and we're entirely relationship-driven business, as we all are. It doesn't matter what we do. We're all in the relationship. But what I find quite interesting now is that the advantage of the really big businesses, or what, you know, the Libra businesses, or the large overhead yacht broker businesses, as I call them, the advantage of those businesses, they've got lots and lots of people on the ground. They've got lots of data. They've got great SEOs. They've got great spread into the digital market, all that sort of thing. But we, as the smaller business, are able to we have a handle on information that the internet doesn't have. So we're spending a lot of time on the telephone, talking to our friends in the industry and looking at boats and looking at deals that are not commonly available for everybody to see. We're calling it the sort of not publicly listed market. And so as AI and as digital improves the way it is so quickly at the moment, we're finding all the deals that we're doing offline are the ones that where the value is. And so it's an opportunity for us to take leaps forward because we're offline. That's interesting, and I want to pick up on that a bit later, if that's all right, because that's kind of a big theme. Stefan, from your point of view then, you occupy, again, another very different space, not only in terms of sailing yachts, but size, but similar kind of disciplines going on here. So tell us the perspective from Oyster Yachts.
Yeah, what we do see is certainly we are in a different niche, but what we do see is like 3 or 4 strategic changes at the moment. One is, I call it always, the rise of the experiential ownership. So what do I mean with that? What we do see is, in the industry, at least in our industry, there's a shift just from a yacht building to an experience luxury. And what do I mean with that? Well, many of our owners want to have like an adventure yachts ready, boat and yacht, rather than having just a swimming villa, if to say so. So that's one. So we are shifting more to an experience level. And the other big thing we do see is, and we touched on that yesterday, we do see more and more younger centimillionaires coming. So these centimillionaires, at least in our niche, they want to have a purpose if they travel. So it's not like they jump on the boat and just go out, they want to have a purpose. So the purpose is either authenticity or adventure or community. And I think that's where the shifting takes place at the moment, at least in our niche. And then I think the third one is where we do see a big change as well, is the power of community. We do see that with our Oyster World Rally. We just talked about it, but the World Rally, we are the only ones in the world who can deliver a complete package for boats leaving. So Antigua, we left 24 boats for a circumnavigation of 25,000 nautical miles. And that community, I can tell you, we prepare them for like 2 years upfront, and they come in as the best friends afterwards.
That I was going to come on to that, but we might as well get into it now. I mean, that experiential idea, presumably you're saying it builds affinity, it builds engagement with the brand. Anders, is that something that you're seeing, or how are you kind of addressing that notion of?
Well, I think we sort of, by and large, read a little bit of the same signals amongst the clients that Stefan was referring to. We've coined an acronym called strategic lifestyle intent, if you will, and I would paraphrase it slightly differently, because obviously we're maybe less about the sailing and more about motor yachts, just due to the split of the market. But what we usually sort of feel and experience internally, that compared to maybe 10, 15 years ago, it's a little bit less about the yacht as a sort of floating technical asset, and more about where it can take you, with whom, and what you can actually experience together. So I think, by and large, the same sort of sentiment shift we feel resonating, and it's equally true for sales brokerage as it is for new builds, as it is for charter clients. And I think there are many contributing factors. One is a dramatically younger clientele, especially on the charter side, that we've seen emerge really during and after the pandemic. And while there's been some attrition, there's also been a lot of staying power, right? And then the second thing is probably the sort of transfer of wealth that is ongoing and will be expected to continue over the next 5 to 10 years, which is really, really unprecedented. And then the third thing that contributes, obviously, is that the really rich, over the last 5-6 years, they have gotten significantly even richer.
And maybe, if you don't mind to add to that, I think what we also see cross-industry is, I call it the return of authentic seamanship. So even if all of our boats are normally delivered with crew, I do see in our industry that more and more owners want to do their own sailing. So they want to be ocean connected. So the development needs to be more like a comfortable situation where owners can do their own boat sailing. And I think that is something that I assume happens cross industry at the moment.
Chris, are you seeing this experiential idea?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, we're seeing it for years, but there is always a big spread in the market, and we obviously only deal with a small part of the market, but we do deal with people that like to go off and do the Northwest Passage. They have boats that that are capable of going very ultra long distance, not just in distance, but in time is kind of the key, being able to be autonomous for a long time. And then they have specific interests, whether it be conservation or whether it be, extreme sport or one of those things. But definitely the yacht is the tool rather than the flashy asset. In one side, I mean, there's plenty of people we deal with where it is still a flashy asset, and they still want to do the milk run between Monaco and Saint-Tropez and all the other places. But I absolutely agree. I mean, your round the world trip is something that drags new customers into your business, which is fantastic. Certainly, from our perspective, we just operate in the information delivery and the confidence delivery part of the ecosystem. Everybody here has their part to play. Our job is to go and find the new guys, bring them into the market, give them the fantastic experience, which means they want to continue in the industry and use everybody here's service, whether it be building a boat, insuring the boat, whether it be painting a boat, whether it be chartering the boat, whatever it might be. Yeah. Our job is the very early stages of that thing, and if that's experience, then all the better, and that's what we do try and offer that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing a good job of guessing my next question here. That's 2 in a row. Well done. So just in terms, let's pick up on that in terms of just how good a job is the industry doing in terms of keeping people in it, keeping owners in it, converting charterers to...
Well, I think it's, again, just looking at purely from a brokerage perspective, I'm sorry, but that's my day-to-day job. So looking at purely from a brokerage perspective, it's the real expense to our business is acquiring clients, acquiring new clients. That's the expensive thing. Actually looking after them, because the lifetime expenditure of a client is so high, and the potential revenue for a business from acquiring one good client is so high, that actually going out to find these people is the expense, not looking after them. So therefore, to look after them well is absolutely essential. And the moment that you don't look after them well, and they have a bad experience and they leave the industry, it's not just one deal you're losing. You're losing a client to everybody. That might go on to do something with Fraser's, might build a boat with Oyster, might have it managed and chartered by me and have it painted. It's a real disaster. So we spend all of our time, really, looking after the people we know well. And then occasionally we get new people introduced by our current clients.
Anders, do you want to pick up on that?
No, just a spontaneous comment to that. I think 100% I agree with everything that you said, and really sort of the endeavor of finding new blood into the system is really to try to find them and then try to get to deep enough within their circle of trust so that they feel comfortable transacting with you, whether it's charter or sales or new build or what have you. And that is by and large the challenge. I think our scale makes it possible to utilize cross-selling tools quite efficiently, and pretty much as Chris says, the real challenge is finding the new people. Once you have them and have managed to convince them that you're the right choice for them, then keeping them is in some ways the easy part. And you are the natural resource to whom they come, because you're within the circle of trust with whatever yachting-related quests or questions or issues or hopes and dreams they may have.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I think for everyone, it is important that EBITDA is our main KPI, so you can either increase revenue or reduce costs. So sales is the important part of it. And for us, it's also the whole ecosystem that you have said, Chris, is important, because keeping the owner and then maybe buying a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one is what we need. So that is where we are doing all these experiences. And you can imagine if someone is going on a world rally, he needs to pay the entry fee, but then he's spending nearly $500,000 for the whole site of doing destination experience. Well, why shouldn't we do the destination experience for them? So that life cycle and experience I think, will change in future for all of us.
Okay, so Stefan, you were in the job, I think you joined in about September, is that right? Something like that, maybe August. What have you achieved so far, and what have you learned since you've been? I know you were at Hansi Yachts before, but you come from automotive. So what have you noticed in that sort of first 6-month period about yachting?
It's a very good question. If we would have time, then I can answer it in complexity. But what we do see is we are not in an easy market at the moment. And that not easy market means we would need to find new ideas and new products and new possibilities to sell and keep the level and increase it. So what we do see is, what I do see is we need to look at, and I will come to that later as well, but we are a UK manufacturer. And as you can imagine, the labor rate in the UK is a bit higher than in some of the other areas. So the one way in order back to the EBITDA to still work and produce is we need to drive efficiencies. So that is what I was looking at from a manufacturing point of view. So looking at all the locations in order to drive that. And then the second one is I do see a big shift on more comfort. So we would need to make sure that our customers and owners can handle the boats by far easier. So I'm looking at the current product range, and we need to go bigger, but we need to get smaller, but we might need to get in a complete different business. And that's what we have done, looking at the high quality level, but then also making sure that we drive the costs down.
What do you mean by completely different business?
Well, like I said before, the destination experience is something we are doing. I'm building up new service areas everywhere in the world at the moment. So Barcelona I opened up in order to, because Palma, for those that are at Mallorca, is getting very expensive. So we need to find new locations. I'm adding a new service point in Antigua in order to then also deliver everything that the owner needs, because they sometimes come, they don't even are able to say, they have never taken a boat into the water, so we will deliver them with everything. So we will deliver them with the crew, with the training, with the service. So it's a full package, right? So that's what I'm aiming to, besides the manufacturing side.
You talked there about the need potentially to go bigger. You once told me you lost Tom Cruise as a client because you weren't big enough. So that's a definite direction for Oyster, is it?
Yeah, there was a secret between you and me, but yes.
but it's okay. He's building a boat in Finland, right?
Yeah,
so he'll be
right. But yes, you're right. I think what we need to do is we need to educate our customers by the end in order to get bigger. So the market is getting bigger as well. And while the boats are getting easier to sail, then yes, we need to go bigger. I'm not announcing a new product now, but there's more to come.
Excellent. Anders, you used to be a CEO of Baltic Yachts. Have you got any advice for Stefan here about the sailing market?
I think if I look at sort of the particular niche, the yards that seem to be doing well, not only in putting out great products, but also financially, I think sort of focus and having a fairly well crystallized sets of USPs really, to me, is key. It was key with the sort of financial and strategic turnaround of Baltic that we affected during the 4 years that I was there. And it's also, if you look at somebody like Southern Wind, who is very, very focused in their offering, I think that's one of the keys really to their success. They have a certain size range, they have certain things that they know they do really well, then they have certain things that they just don't do because they know that it's sort of outside the scope of their focus and comfort zone.
Let's sort of move on to a few challenges that you guys are facing. Anders, tell me about how hard is it running a big full-service brokerage these days, and what are the issues that you're sort of not struggling with, but facing?
Look, it's wonderful to have a strong brand, and it's great if you have a long history that you can fall back upon and tell great war stories about. But at the end of the day, because it's about services, really what I see, 98% of the brand value that we have is really the people. Now, Chris has 25 people. We have 230. So it's about 10 times harder, because managing people, finding, retaining top talent is forever going to be, to me, the main challenge of this type of professional services business.
Chris, what about you, from your perspective? What kind of pain points or issues are you sort of struggling with?
I think the biggest thing we struggle with is good yachts available for sale. I mean, I say good yachts, goodness me. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, anything that floats is good. But right at the end of the market, I'm talking about 60-meter plus. Invariably, there are some yachts available for sale at any time. But the really good ones, it's very difficult. I've got plenty of demand. I mean, I've got a 66-meter Fed ship under offer right now. 3 buyers were vying for that, and they ended up paying the asking price. So, I mean, those 2 buyers are disappointed, but there was only one available in that price range, not price range, in that size range and quality range. There was only one. So we're really struggling with stock, with really good quality stock.
This is a really boring panel because we're just all agreeing with each other, but just a spontaneous comment, I think specifically 60-meter plus, we are significantly inventory constricted. So yes, we're seeing the same thing for relatively recent pedigree boats. There would be demand for more if there were more supply.
Yeah.
And sorry. So I think that plays nicely into shipyards that are prepared to invest in stock. See, obviously, what people want is a boat now. That's what they want. And if you've come to me and you would say, let's talk about building a new boat. Well, we'll talk about it for 6 months before we even go and think about a design. Then by the time you've come to a conclusion about what you're going to do, you're already a year in. Then you want to start building a boat. Well, you have 4 to 5 years away. That's a really long process, especially if you're 38 years old, you just made 20 billion. You want something now. And that's what we're finding. We're finding boats are actually changing hands during construction, sometimes 2 or even 3 times during construction as they go up in value. So I think it's an interesting market that there's so much demand and so little supply.
And that's a specific challenge that is sort of, to me, also exacerbated by the sort of, younger, less experienced buyers. And it's not uncommon that we have first-time buyers looking at 50-meter, 60-meter plus. 10, 15 years ago, there was a more organic progression. You had your boats, and then you maybe escalated to yachts and then sort of went through the natural steps as we as an industry saw it. But now when you have this 38-year-old who's never built a boat before, setting the expectations both to aid the yard so that it can be a successful conclusion, launch whenever that may be, and also as the professional advisors to these clients, it's a much bigger delta in terms of experience and know-how, and in some ways it's a bigger challenge to advise them well, because that delta is so big.
So when we talk about headwinds, well, first of all, the good thing is you can have boats from me as well. So just let me know, give me a call. But anyhow, so on the headwinds, I think I do see 3 things. One is certainly at the moment the regulation is killing us. So if we're not only talking, just take an example on tariffs as well to the US, right? So if a customer is signing a contract at the moment, or he signed it a year ago, it was like 5%. Right, then it turned 10%, now it turns 15%, and when we don't know when and how to ship the boat over. So regulation in general, also from an environmental point of view, is something that we're definitely struggling with from a headwind perspective. The other one I do see is the supplier volatility. So, I mean, you see that now tankers are not coming with parts that should be delivered. So the whole supply chain is being disrupted at the moment and will be, especially after that weekend. And also from a UK point of view, what I do see is the European Union is giving us more programs to build like plants, do some greenfield things. I think that's where we also saw yesterday millionaires are leaving, but it's also we need to make sure that also manufacturers are not leaving. And the third one is actually back to your point. I think talented people is something that is getting less and less. So I think the blue sky would be really if we have like a pan industry, like a academy where we're doing craftsmanship, but we certainly need to work on those.
Just picking up on the broader point of sustainability. Now, the leading yards are doing wonderful work with alternative propulsion, but even if all the, give or take 200 some 30-meter plus new builds that are launched in an average year, if they were running on hydrogen or methanol or diesel electric hybrid or whatever, it would be but a drop in the ocean, because the installed base is whatever it is, 7,000 yachts in the 30-meter plus range. So that's really where we need to focus. And I was speaking at a conference in Cape Town last October, and it was about the size of this audience, and I asked them a question, because the topic was mostly about sustainability. How many people are familiar with HVO? And I think there were about 5 hands raised in the audience. Same thing went for the Superyacht Summit in Hong Kong. We still have quite a lot of traveling preachership to do, just to sort of give the few simple steps by which we can clean up the existing fleet. And the good news is that it's a simple program. Switch to HVO, favor marinas with green electricity, cruise a little bit slower, knock a knot or a knot and a half off the average cruising speed, negligible effect on the experience, significant effect on the emissions. And finally, teach the crew about sustainable and circular practices on board. And a 5th bonus is get your boat Yacht Environmental Transparency Index, YETI certified, so you get sort of a baseline for where you're at right now. So when you do your next refit, you get a sort of bang for the buck analysis of what are the sort of easy ways to decrease your footprint. But we need more people getting on that bandwagon and understanding that it's not about the future fleet, it's about cleaning up the existing fleet, because at the end of the day, one of the risks is regulatory. And if we don't show the world and the regulatory bodies that we can clean up the industry, they will do it for us. And that's going to be bad for business.
Yeah. And adding to that sustainability, I think, well, certainly sailing is the best sustainability, to be honest. But besides that, longevity is something that is important for me, because the longer we can reuse all of our yachts, and we do have some of them like 50 plus years, retrofit them, I think that for me is also a big sustainability factor. So it should be also a bit of an industry norm to make sure that we can reuse and refit all the boats that are floating in the world.
Just quickly, because I want to get to some questions. We mentioned it sort of at the start about that. I think, Chris, you touched on the AI thing or the digital thing. Just in general, Anders, how is the industry faring in terms of digital and the adoption of AI? I mean, are we keeping pace with other luxury markets? Are we lagging, or what's the story?
Well, look, we're probably not keeping pace, but I think it was probably at this conference either last year or year before that when some fellow broker was asked about the state of the market, and his reply was, it's not a market, it's a collection of individual anomalies. Now, 30-meter plus new builds, that's about 200 launches a year. 30-meter plus brokerage transactions, that's about, what, 350, 400, maybe 450 in a great year. So it's a really, really small market. Given the small amount of units and transactions, I think we're actually doing reasonably well. Then my sort of follow-up to that reasoning is really that whether it's Chris or us or whichever reputable superyacht services provider, this is really about sort of white gloves concierge service at the end of the day. And that doesn't necessarily respond hugely well to scale.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of share the view, but I think, obviously AI it's improving every day so rapidly, it's impossible for pretty much anybody to keep up with it unless you're fully in the industry. Definitely, we're trying to make use of it day to day. We have somebody whose specific job it is to look after AI within the business. What we find is that the two things that AI do, one, it really enhances the client experience, so by the time they get to us, they're really much more informed than they ever were. They really know the questions they want to ask. They really know, roughly, about the structure of how the deals work and what's going to be expected of them and really what prices of things are. But what they don't know and what AI doesn't yet do, and I don't see how it will if people keep their information offline, is it doesn't know the nuance of the deal. And so I think for our businesses still, and going forward, I don't see how AI gets into the nuance of the deal. I mean, maybe well be proven wrong in a few weeks' time, but certainly at the moment it feels like we still have a job just understanding how to put the deal together once everybody is fully informed. We still have a job there.
Well, because you're dealing with human psychology most of the time.
As much as anything, it's the human psychology. Nobody has to have a boat. Nobody needs a boat. They want a boat, and we try and fulfill that. I always find by the time somebody comes and talks to me, if I don't actually sell them a boat, I feel like I'm letting them down because they've made the decision. They want to get across the line. They want to go yachting. And now you've just got to help them into the market to feel secure.
Yeah, we could get into that a lot more. And I was speaking to some lawyers here. And, you know, AI gives them much more. They're much more informed, but then equally that sort of adds to the workload, and maybe the AI tools aren't giving them quite the right information, so they've then got to. So it's sort of there's pros and cons, there's opportunities and risks. But anyway, does anyone have any questions on any topic that they would like to put to the guys on the panel out on the floor, or do we have any Slido questions? Any hands up? Anyone? Hopefully there'll be some questions here. Here we go. Let's take one of these. Is the yacht's value retention and liquidity becoming more of a critical factor for new owners?
I mean, I can answer. I mean, you know, all the people I represent, they're all sensible business people. So you buy a big asset, of course, you want to see that value retained. How it gets retained and whether it actually is retained is a matter for all of us, really. And certainly the education of people. Often people think that the biggest expense is buying the boat, where we all know it's not. It's the maintenance of the boat. You know, the cost of a boat is the difference between what you paid for it and what you sold it for, and the cost of running it in between. And that bit running it in between is often much more than the difference between what you paid and what you sold it for. But what we do find is enormously now is the disparity between new build cost and second-hand cost. So right now, there's huge value in the second-hand market, given the cost of new build. I mean, I've seen there's plenty of great yacht builders in the auditorium, but the cost is dictated by the supply of all the parts that make a yacht, so including manpower. And this is just, and whereas a second-hand yacht that might be only 5 years old is lagging behind, 20%, 30% just on that one metric.
I don't see that there's a huge sort of change over the last 5 years, perhaps, with focus on this. First of all, the preeminent yards, they've done a good job in terms of protecting the value of the investment, because new build prices have gone up quite significantly. And usually when we have this type of conversation, I tend to tell the owners that, look, this is a great investment as long as you accept the fact that the return on it is mostly emotional.
Well, the change I see is that we have owners that before that bought their boat and then they're doing whatever they want to do with it, but didn't think about selling it again. So we are getting more and more owners who, for example, want to do a world rally and then afterwards want to sell the boat. So the life cycle of the used boat is also part of the deal. So that's where at least we see from an experiential point of view.
I think we've got a question from the floor over here.
Thank you. In regards to the nurturing and retention of existing clients, which is a key element, and in regards to the versatility of crew needed for the new type of clients that want to have more of an experience on board, what kind of versatility are you looking for in the skills of the brokers?
Look, Fraser, ever since 1947, has really been set up with independent brokers, which means that internally it sometimes gets quite boisterous, but it also gives us a really wide variety of nationalities, personalities, cultural sensitivities, and competencies. And I genuinely see that as a sort of competitive asset, because we operate in a market of extreme scarcity. The 7,000 yachts mentioned before, they're pretty much all different from each other, and the owners for sure are. So when you have a wide diversity of both skill sets and personalities and cultural sensibilities, it increases your chance of making a good match with whatever the needs of the client in case. Maybe, I don't know if that addresses the question at least partly, but that would be my answer. I don't know, Chris, how you see it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as crew is concerned, I mean, it's just another facet of the business. It's not something that I spend a lot of time worrying about. I mean, I'm more focused on the technical side of acquisition and sale of the asset and the charter of the asset. Obviously, the crew make the asset, make the boat work for the owner, unless you have top crew, people won't be retained into the industry. So they couldn't be more important. And I know that there are places where crew are now being trained to really very high standards, which we didn't have before, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think also in our niche, what I do see is more and more interconnection between brokerage, crew, charter is happening. So I think the information that is floating at the end also into our brokerage world at Oyster is sometimes coming from a complete different area. So the communication across these various change of ecosystem, I feel, in future is more important and is getting more important.
Obviously, we're overrunning, but whatever. Let's press on. This is probably one for you to take quickly, Anders. Is there a need for big offices all around the world in brokerage if deals are still done over the phone and clients are increasingly mobile?
I don't think there's a need for big offices, but when we were talking about that circle of trust earlier, I do think that a reasonably wide global footprint is an asset, especially for sales brokerage. It's still pretty traditional, and although a bigger proportion is done sort of, online and virtually, there's still a fair amount of face-to-face, especially at the initial phase of creating this bond of trust and of this relationship. So do we need huge glass palaces all over the world? No. Do we need a wide geographical footprint? And it's actually, the converse is true, because the clientele is quite mobile and they don't mind having a physical place to visit and to run the meetings that are always associated with the transactions.
Chris?
Yeah, I see the question from Ian, and it's a question that I ask myself quite regularly. But actually, I have as good a relationship with some of the Fraser brokers as I do with some of my own brokers in-house, as I do with Burgess or Frasers or Campers or Edmonston. We have, the brokerage community is very tight-knit. And again, it's a relationship-driven business. And if you trust somebody, then you'll communicate with them. And so, it doesn't matter that I don't have an office in San Diego. I've done deals with brokers in the Fraser's office in San Diego just as well as I have with their brokers in Monaco. It's a network. It depends what you're trying to achieve. Big offices all around the world if you want to rule the world. But if you just want to be capable of selling boats and have good information, I think the network is the important thing, rather than having your own network of big offices.
We are in a seller's market. Does this mean there is minimal reduction from asking price? And if so, what is the average percentage reduction?
Well, that's my latest experience is this boat that I now have under contract. 3 buyers, basically within a hair's breadth of the asking price for a quality second-hand boat. Well, I'd say quality. A branded, well-maintained, sort of immaculate second-hand boat. So yeah, absolutely, asking prices if you set them correctly. Of course, not if you set them unrealistically. But we've got quite a lot of data, quite a lot of science behind setting an asking price these days. So if you set it sensibly, we're pretty much selling at asking prices. Yeah.
Anders?
I would have to give the Japanese answer to this, which is it depends. In the bigger sort of pedigree end of the market, I would agree with Chris's assessment. In the sort of more crowded segments, 30 to 40, there's more play, but it's impossible to answer because this is sort of assuming that the inventory is priced right at the outset, which it not always is for a variety of different factors.
Yeah, and to add that, the expectation of some of the people who want to sell their boats might be a little bit too high as well. So I think there is certainly some reduction in the market, and we also see that as well, pending really on a case-to-case basis.
Okay, probably time for one more quick one. Let's take this one then. You mentioned 60 metre plus inventory as a bottleneck for growth. Are there equal issues with crew marinas and reef yards, or is the current market growth sustainable? You want to take that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It's something I ask myself all the time. Where do all these boats go? We've got however many new boats coming to the market every year, coming into the marinas that everybody wants to be in. There are only so many spaces. I'm asking, where do they all go? Because, there are not that many new marinas being built. I mean, where do you see they going? Do you remember, in the 20 years ago, there must have been 50 Mangusta 80s, 90s, 100s, 120s in the south of France. Now you don't see any. Where have they gone? I mean, it's quite interesting.
I can ask our intelligence department, they can answer it, but I don't know.
Yeah, who are they being run by? It's extraordinary. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure, it's a bottleneck, and I think especially, crew as perhaps the average number of larger new builds is probably on the increase, and crewing a 60 meter in terms just of numbers of crew needed is completely different from crewing a 30 meter, and you can't put rookies on a 60 meter. So where do we get all these people with the required 10 to 15 years experience, ideally, if they're only starting last year or the year before? So that is for sure a challenge.
Yeah, and I think the marina certainly also is a bottleneck, with more and more boats but less marinas. But I think also here we need to go different ways. We can do mooring, we can tender in. We do have bays where we can also protect the boats very easily, and whenever they are doing more circumnavigation, then boat also are then sailing and crewing. So I think even if there's a bottleneck, I think we can have some way around it.
I don't think we're going to struggle for crew, though, if I'm honest. I mean, I think there's, certainly it's much more difficult to get experienced crew right at the, in the top positions. But the volume of crew coming in from the hospitality world and the attraction to the industry, is very strong. I mean, we get, we don't do crewing, and we get 10 CVs a day of new people wanting to get into the industry, which is really encouraging, I think.
I agree. I think what we also need to change a bit is because the crews, at least at our side, are normally young. So they end their life cycle of a crew with being like 30-something years. So I think we all need to think of what are we doing with them to have an attractive program for them afterwards. So, for example, can we get them as being a commissioning engineer, or can we have them as being a project manager? Because that might be also part of their understanding, do I want to join Oyster, Fraser, or anyone else? What is my future in these various yachts businesses?
This is fun. Probably need to wrap up soon. Let's do one more here, Chris. Chris, in 60-meter plus range, could you describe the profile of clients you mentioned have a strong demand for this category of yachts?
Yeah, I mean, the profile of our clients, I would say, is pretty much the same as everybody else's. We're looking at 50% of them are American, maybe even more, maybe 60% today American. I would say of that, probably half of those are experienced older clients, up to 80 years old, doing deals for 80-year-olds. But the real advent that we find now is the ultra young buyers, the sort of the less than 40, I would say, and they're the ones that buying not 60 meters plus. They're not in that market. They're in the 100-meter plus market. That's the real growth that I've seen. Is the really young guys with a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a question over here, if you can see below the lights. Yes, please.
Yes. Hi. Is it working? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anders, Chris, Stefan. This is Anders for you. You emphasise the white glove treatment, but as you said, more and more extreme wealth, and Chris, you also just touched on this, is in the young. You also mentioned that often they don't know much or care much about the boats, and that's a difficult part of it as well. But they're expecting probably quite fast treatment, immediate treatment, because everything around them is so automated and technically advanced. Do you think there is any valuable opportunity in automating any transactions or relationships early on for those that are young and expect such fast treatment?
For sure, I'm fundamentally a technology optimist, and I generally tend to find that sort of in the short run you overestimate the potential of new technologies, but in the long run you kind of underestimate them. And once upon a time, a long time ago, I used to have a real job in the 90s building websites in the sort of early days of e-commerce, and everything that we were predicting in 1997, it actually happened. But it happened 15, 20 years later than we were expecting at the time. So I'm not fundamentally worried about AI taking away the sort of skilled jobs that we have currently. And with this level of incoming that we now see through the digital channels, I think we do a reasonable job of generally replying within a 12-hour time frame from the incoming ping coming in just through sort of human intervention. Is it possible to automate a part of that in the future? I do believe yes, but I also find that when you actually get back to a real client with a phone call or an email or a WhatsApp or whatever, within 12 hours, with a real person replying, the fundamental reaction is positive surprise. Because so often these days, you get a bot, which is sort of kind of maybe close to on topic, but not quite. And the sort of AI slop, which this type of automated response so easily falls into, that's definitely below expectations.
I think it's a good point. I'm absolutely with you that at the end of the day, the human contact is very good. But what I definitely see is I remember very well, there's probably plenty of people in the room remember too, you used to make a telephone call to book an airplane ticket. Yeah, and I couldn't possibly have imagined going online to book an airplane ticket. I had to speak to somebody. And that's kind of where we are with charter at the moment. But of course, we all know where aeroplane tickets have gone. So I don't see why in the future, technically, we wouldn't be taking deposits on boats for a certain period of time online without any interaction. I do think the delivery at the end of the day will be still human, but to the point made, I think that absolutely automation is coming in a degree. You know, it would be so frustrating now to have to make a telephone call to get an airplane ticket. And in 25 years' time, maybe it'll be very annoying to have to talk to a broker in order to buy a 90-meter yacht. But, you know, who knows where it's going, but certainly I can never say never.
Yeah, you'd never get through, would you? Trying to book an aeroplane ticket on the phone.
No.
You wouldn't go anywhere. Let's do this one from Benjamin Maltby of Keystone Law. Stefan, is there anything the industry can do to encourage greater sailing superyacht ownership?
It's a very good question, yeah. I think I can answer it in two ways. One is, I think when you look at pure sailing, and I'm a passionate sailor, so whenever I'm on the water and there's a second boat, it's a race for me. But that changes. So these regatta guys are dying more and more. So we would need to find for the super yachts people who have not even thought about sailing and thought about finding a boat. So I think this audience here is perfect because we talked about so many people here that are considering to support wealthy people. So that database is fantastic. And I think we would need to link that to all of us in order to see where might be new customers coming from. And the second one is, it is about lifestyle. So I think we would need to open up our industry to lifestyle. I'm not saying it should be vogue, but we need to make sure that we can even connect to automotive. Yeah. So because I mean, people have like 8 cars in their garage, like 5 Aston Martins and 2 Rolls Royce, where they might be the right customers for us, even if they haven't thought about looking at sailing and super yachts. And the other one is, I think we need to explore more the ecosystem, that we give them, tell them, this is your boat, whatever you need, we will support it. Either you go to the Mediterranean just for the weekend, or you want to do a crossing, we will give you the crew, we'll give you the service, we will give you everything you need. So I think that's where we would need to get better.
You know, in my private life, I'm also a passionate sailor. I also have a powerboat, so I'm kind of non-denominational about it. My kids are 10 and 12, and I've kind of ruined them because when they were small, I used to run product development for a serial powerboat manufacturing company. So my son thinks that there's no life below 50 knots. So he's fundamentally uninterested in the whole concept of going slow in any kind of vehicle. But when he sees foiling sailing boats, he kind of thinks that that's cool. And we now actually have the technologies. There's been one, I shan't name the name of the Finnish yard, who delivered a 111-footer that is foil assisted and is easily capable of hitting 30+ knots. That is one of the answers by which you can make sailing cool. for the next generation. And those technologies will be available in the next 7 to 10 years would be my prediction. As soon as flight control on the foiling systems is well enough developed, you can actually give it into civilian hands, capable civilian hands, but anyways.
It will take some time because the technique is so complicated for having an owner who's never sailed with it. So, but yeah, hopefully.
I think just the simple answer is sales, really. You know, if you've got somebody sitting in front of you that wants to go yachting, hasn't decided really what they want to do, the educational process, we spend our entire life educating new people coming into the market. They come in, they sit down, they tell you what they think they want. Then you ask them what they actually want to do, and it turns out they need a totally different boat. And sometimes the answer is a sailing boat. Very often the answer could be a sailing boat. Yeah. So we could get more people into sailing if we just sold the opportunity. The second thing we could do is get people, big shipyards around here, and I'm looking at Farouk, to build boats on spec. Always talking about it. I mean, I know it's an expensive thing to do, but if you build sailing boats on spec, they will get sold. You build big motor yachts on spec, they will get sold.
If the answer's a sailing boat, what's the question then?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? If the answer's a sailing boat, what's the question? I want to spend meaningful time on the water with my family and friends. Yeah. That's a simple question. You can do it on a motor yacht or a sailing yacht. The one thing about sailing is, it tends to be associated with splashy, wet and cold. And of course, a big sailing yacht is not splashy, wet and cold.
No, so I think for me the best moment on a sailing boat is once the engine shuts off. And I think the difference between a power boat and a sailing boat is the events start when you go on a sailing boat. For the power boats, in many cases, you go from A to B in order to explore B, but the sailing boat event is actually where it starts the moment that you put a feet on your boat.
To me, the question really would be, how can you experience the ultimate personal freedom without having a bad environmental conscience? Because we have the technologies to build 150-footers sailing super yachts that can cross the Pacific Ocean without burning a single drop of fossil fuel.
Should we leave it there? Yeah. I mean, we could go all day, but that was a fantastic way to end. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.